Hello and welcome to another tutorial. So this time we are going to be continuing to extend the character controller. So we've already got the first person character controller, so we've got things like being able to run, crouch, jump. We had stuff for coyote time and working with platforms. So we've got a lot of different things already added into there. So what we're going to be doing this time is starting to get in some more general gameplay aspects. So getting in, having the concept of stamina. So being able to have it that running, consumes a resource, have things like jumping consume that. We also want to get in so that we have health effects and things like of that happening as well. And part of this is we're going to look at sort of an architecture to try and make it that how we show health and stamina is something that we're not sort of really locking in one specific way. So that's going to be part of this, is having a really good architecture for this. So let's dive on in, because the beginning thing that we need, it's pretty straightforward, is we need to have stamina. We need to have stuff where we're controlling how quickly that gets drained. So what I'm going to do is, as a starting point, we'll set up here stamina. We'll have max stamina, which we might make that 100. It's a convenient number to work with. Then we want to think of, okay, what are the things that drain stamina? So jumping should be able to drain stamina. Stamina cost, jumping. So jumping probably should have a pretty large cost, because this is something that every single jump should have this cost. So let's maybe make it 10. So jumping will have a cost. We also want to have running have a cost. So public float stamina cost running. Now running's cost, it's not going to be just a one-off where you're running, so therefore you pay this amount. Running needs to be an ongoing cost per second. So whatever we set this to, that's kind of the number of seconds was going to control the number of seconds we'd be able to run for. So if we set this to, say, 2, then at max stamina we'd get 50 seconds. If we set it to 4, then at max stamina we'd get 25 seconds. That starts to feel about right. So I'm actually going to go for 4 here, because that feels about right, that we'd get 25 seconds. So stamina needs to then recover. So, okay. So stamina recovery rate. So how quickly do we want that to recover? So again, that's something where we probably want it to build back up pretty quickly. So if I made it, say, 10 and we were fully depleted, then what that would mean is we are now down to 10 seconds for it to recover, which is lengthy enough that, that 10 seconds people need to be a little strategic about it. So I think that's good. Now we also want that recovery to have a delay. So from when we have stopped consuming stamina, we want to have probably a short little delay. Avoids people finding sneaky little tricks where they can just be rapidly switching between using stamina or not. So I'm going to have a stamina recovery delay. I might make that half a second. I think feels about right. So that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So, okay, we want to now start having things happen that are going to be consuming stamina. So that's actually pretty straightforward. So jump, we know we have this is in jumping rise phase. So we can just look for where we set that to true. There's actually probably only going to be one place where we do that. So here we go. So this would be where what I would do is consume stamina. And I'm going to consume an amount based on our config, stamina cost for jumping. So that's good. Then if we think about running, so running, that's something where what I would do is we have our movement stuff here. And this is something where we know if we're grounded or in coyote time. So we've got a few different things that we could be checking here for whether we decide to actually consume sort of stamina or not. So one of the things I could do is I could check here if I am running and I am grounded. So I think we should only be consuming stamina at that point, because jump, we do have that chunk of consumption there for it. So that could mean if you managed a really long jump, that it actually is going to start recovery during that, which I think is okay. So if we're running and grounded, then again, we will consume stamina, config, and we'll have our stamina cost for running multiplied by time.delta time. The other thing then we can do is potentially be ticking sort of the recovery of the stamina. So actually what I'm going to do is have an update stamina function, and then down here we'll have protected void update stamina. So if we're running and we're grounded, then we'll consume stamina. But if we are essentially anything other than that, so we can then potentially start recovering stamina. So otherwise, well, we need to also be keeping track of when we last consumed stuff so that we know, okay, how long have we got till we're able to recover. So that means I know I'm going to need a stamina recovery delay remaining, which will be 0. So otherwise, F, and that means I also need my current stamina. So current stamina, that will initialize from the config. So if current stamina is less than our maximum, so if we're running consume stamina, if we're able to recover, so what we would check is, okay, well, let's update the recovery delay remaining. So recovery delay remaining, we subtract time delta time. Now this should also only update if this will be something where if we were paused, so that's something to consider. If we had a pause system, we would not want to update the stamina if we were paused. So we update the delay remaining, and then F, stamina to recovery delay remaining is less than or equal to 0. Then current stamina is a mathf min of current stamina plus our recovery rate by time.delta time and our config's max stamina. This just ensures it won't go over the maximum amount of stamina there. So if we're able to recover, we start performing that recovery. So that's good. What I could also do is I could actually put actually no, that check there is fine. Could also do an extra check here of we only update this if it's greater than 0. That's just going to avoid it potentially ballooning out to too negative a value and wrapping around. Incredibly unlikely, very, 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 very unlikely to happen, but good to just sort of take that into account. That then also means I can have my consume stamina function, which it is going to say, okay, well, current stamina is equal to a mathf max of current stamina minus amount and 0, just so we ensure it doesn't ever go below 0. So that's good. That should mean we can consume stamina and everything like that, and we'll move these variables up the top here, just so that we've got everything in a easy to find location. But this also now changes some other things, because if we are out of stamina, that means we shouldn't be able to jump, for example. So that's something where we now need to take a look at how we are handling things like our jump input, because that's something where if we've requested a jump, we have to check if we actually can perform a jump. Because if we can't perform a jump, then we're not going to be able to actually sort of do this. So what we want to check is if we've gotten the input jump and we can currently jump, that it can perform it. So then I can set this up here of a public pool can currently jump. That's going to require that config can jump is true and that current stamina is greater than or equal to config stamina cost for jumping. So that's a key thing. We have to have enough stamina to be able to jump. So what that should mean is if I jumped really quickly, I would potentially be able to hit the point where I can't actually jump anymore. So what I'm going to do, just to make it easier for us to see this, is I'm going to make the current stamina public. Now, in our initialization, I need to make sure our current stamina is equal to our stamina cost for, our max stamina. So that's good. And I also need to make sure when we consume stamina that we are properly setting the stamina recovery delay is the recovery delay. So this should mean that when I jump, I see the stamina value here decrease, and that I should be able to hit a point where I then can't jump because of that. So we can see the stamina is 100, and I jump and it goes down. And I'll just cut out the sound for now. And if I jump really quickly, so I can still jump, it is trying to recover, but now I can't jump until the stamina gets high enough. So that's good. That means we've got those mechanics working. And if I run, what I'll see is I'm sprinting now, it's going to be decreasing. If I jump while sprinting, it decreases even more, which is good. That's what I expect to see happen. And then what won't happen yet, because we haven't coded it in, is when I run out of stamina, I need to actually stop sprinting. So that's good. So then what we can do, similar to what we did here, public bool can currently run requires config can run and current stamina. In this case, we don't really have a set cost that it's going to be. What we could do is say that that stamina has to be greater than or equal to 0. We might find we need to set a very small value here. That is quite possible. We'll find out with that. Now, running is a little bit more complicated because if we take a look at where we use the input run. So this is something where we're doing a bunch of checking for the different things. We do have stuff where we're shut off running in various cases. This is something where what I would do is if I can't currently run, then is running is false, and return. No longer able to run. So what that should mean is if I run full tilt around, that I will hit a point where it will actually kick me out of being able to run. So I'm currently running, and I can jump, so I'll just get that stamina dropping down really fast. So it should hit a point very soon. So it's gone to 0, but it hasn't actually stopped it from running. So that's something where, okay, we need to check and see how we're working with this. We can check in a debug log so we know that it hit that point where it can't currently run, can no longer run, because what we want to see happen is things like the FOV kick and that change. And so that's something that we didn't see. So we want to just make sure that this is actually hitting this point. And this will be something where I might actually even put in a breakpoint so we can just fully catch this happening. So do the same thing with running again and just jump a whole bunch so we use a lot. So then we hit 0. So we've hit 0, but we haven't gotten that message. So that suggests we've got something wrong with our condition here. And it's potentially this aspect where that current stamina has to be greater than or equal to 0. If I change that, probably to just has to be greater than, having it greater than or equal to the equals I shouldn't have really had in there. So I'll just test again. Just want to be certain that it kicks me out of the running fully, that I don't see the FOV kick. So that returned me back to walking normally. So that's good. So, okay, we've got stamina working in that regard as far as it's kicking us out of the different things, which is what we want it to be doing. So that's great. That then means what we now need is the ability to pass that information elsewhere. So this is what I was talking about in terms of want to keep things a little bit decoupled so that we could plug this into kind of anything for displaying it. I'll display it using some basic HUD, but I want to have this that it's a bit more flexible than that. So what I'm going to have is a protected Unity event. So this is going to indicate the information about the stamina. So what I can have is the current value. I can also provide the maximum value for the stamina. So that looks good. On stamina change is a new Unity event. So this is our new Unity event for this. What I want to do is I want to make sure it sends it early on. So not send it in a wake, that wouldn't be a safe place to send it, but sending it in start would make sense. So we send through current stamina and config max stamina. So that's good. And then what we'll do is in our update stamina function, that's where we would just go and update that, or we could send this through in our update function. We could be checking if the current stamina is different to the last, so we're not spamming it through continually. That's probably a good thing. So if previous stamina is not equal to current, then previous stamina is equal to current, and we invoke that. So then we'll set up, so we just have our previous value. It's just going to make it easier to know. Expected float, previous stamina. So now it'll send through that event. And I can down in start initialize the previous as well. So what this means is this gives me something that is going to be able to send that information out, but it's decoupled. So the character motor doesn't need to know about how things get displayed. It's just going to be able to send that information through to the HUD. So here I can now set up my interactions for this. So the first thing I want to do is look at how I want to actually show this. So I'm going to create a panel. I'm going to bring this and anchor it at the bottom left. I always update the X and Y values generally when I go and anchor stuff. Now width-wise, probably 400 feels about right, and maybe a height of 50. That feels pretty decent. Change the color of this so it's a little bit clearer. That's good. And I'm going to get rid of source image, so it's just a nice clear box. So this is going to be the stamina panel. So I want to set up the actual bar inside of this. So I'm going to add in an image. Let's tint the color of this so it's sort of a darkish green, I think is good. That looks pretty good. And then in terms of positioning and sizing this, so as a starting point, if I just anchor it so it's roughly filling up the full space, and then what I can do is if I switch this over to be this style of one, and I adjust my positions, then if I change the width, you'll notice we have something that can fill up the full thing. So that gives us something to indicate the current stamina level. So stamina bar. So then under this, I'm going to create a folder for UI. And I'm going to create a C# script that is going to be character UI stamina bar. And this stamina bar is going to be able to be controlled. So it's going to have a public void on stamina changed, float, current stamina, float, max stamina. And I'm going to set this up so that the script is sitting on this stamina panel. So then here we have our on stamina changed. It's going to add an event, bring over this, go to the stamina bar. You'll notice we have on stamina changed. So now that information is connected to this stamina panel, which means that we can then have this control its display. So what we'll do is, well, unityengine.ui. So we're going to bring in a couple of things. We're going to have an image, stamina bar image. We'll also have rect transform stamina bar transform, because it's the rect transform that we actually need to work with. What we also want to capture here is max bar length, which that max bar length is going to, if we talk to our stamina bar transform, we can get the width from that. And just to make sure that's coming through correctly, I am going to make that public initially, just because I want to be certain. UI stuff can be a little tricky for working with at times, so it's just something good to do a couple of extra tests there just to be sure. So this is good, has come through correctly. We can turn off, these don't need to be raycast targets either. So then what we can do is that can go back to being protected. So when it's changed, well, firstly we want to work out the percentage or the new length. So new length is going to be max bar length multiplied by our current stamina divided by max. So then we can update the length. So our stamina bar transform. Now, this is something where the process generally is we do a set size with current anchors. We tell it the axis and we tell it the length. So just something to be aware of. That's generally the way we approach actually doing this. So because this is decoupled from the character motor, if we wanted to put in text or things like that or represent this in another way, that would actually be quite easy for us to do. So we're moving around, we jump, we see it change, I sprint. So we've got really easy indicator of what's happening there. If I want to improve this a little bit further, I could have a gradient for the stamina bar gradient. So we could then have stamina percentage, which is going to be this. And I could then change the color as well. So stamina bar image color, we use our gradient and we evaluate it at the percentage. What that will let me do is I'll grab that current color because I think that current color is good for if it's full. But then what we can do is at this point, it'll be that. And then here, I'll paste in the current color, but then I'm going to tweak this so it's more of a, I think sort of a grayish yellow. Or we could tint it towards red. So we've got a few different options there of what we could do. It's like that's potentially quite good. So we should get now a nice sort of smooth color change for that. So we've got not just the size of it, but the color also providing us with feedback, which is good. Anytime where you can provide feedback through multiple mechanisms and not just, you know, the pure sort of shape and size of it, but also through color and things like that, always good to be doing. So that's great. We've got our stamina panel. I'm going to rename that to HUD stamina panel and turn that into a prefab. So, okay, good so far. Let's now get in support for being able to have the character have health that can change. So health is going to be fairly similar in many ways to what we already have. But what we're going to have is header health. So we need to have stuff like our maximum health. So max health, again, we'll make that 100. Health, again, should have a recovery rate. So I'll have a public float health recovery rate. So again, this is very much a gameplay balance thing. If we made this, say 10, it would take 10 seconds to fully recover. We could do other setups here as well. I'm going to do the fairly commonly seen just general recovering health, but this is something that you could have lots of different setups for this. We'll then also have a health recovery delay, so how long we need since last taking damage before we recover, and that'll actually make a decent chunk of time, and we usually want that to be a reasonable amount. So that's good. We then, well, we're going to, much like we were tracking stuff like the stamina, we're also going to need to be able to keep track of our current health, things like that. So stamina I'm actually going to change to be accessible like of this, because I think there's, I don't want other things external able to change it, but being able to read it could be useful. I'm going to have a current health. So same sort of deal with that. And we'll also have up here protected float previous health. So we'll work with it largely the exact same way. So protected float, health recovery, delay remaining. We'll also have a Unity event. So it's going to provide through same kind of information. So a float on health changed, new Unity event. And again, is going to be one that provides the current and the maximum, so we can update bars. We also might want to have just a general event for on took damage. And while we won't do anything with it currently, it would also make sense to have an event for on player died, which will actually pass through the character motor. So we end up needing a lot more ones with this, just for having plenty of different bits of feedback that we need. So, okay, good so far. We've got our events so we can pass stuff through. We're going to do the same sort of stuff we did here. So we've set up our health. We're going to do the same things here in terms of invoking that, so it's got those updates, so that's good. Again, same deal here. If previous health is changed, we update the health, and we do on health changed, and we invoke that. So good so far. We need to do the health recovery. Now, health recovery, so if we look at where we were doing update stamina, so update stamina was happening there in the movement. I'm actually going to move update stamina into the main update function. I think that's a reasonable spot to be doing it. I think it can be updating here. So update stamina, and we will also do an update health. So we go down to where we're updating the stamina. So protected void, update health. Now, we don't have any, obviously, consumption of health stuff here, but this part of the stamina one is actually pretty much exactly what we need. So, because we already know that's working, this is a case where I generally would just copy and paste it. So we have health to recover, because we know this is working. So as long as it's a small chunk of code, as long as we're careful, we can ensure that we correctly update things. Health recovery rate, current health, max health, and current health. So that's all we need for the recovery side. For health, that's pretty straightforward. We also need the ability for the character to take damage. So what we're going to have is a public void on take damage. We might make it that it can provide a source. That could be useful. You could also then provide things like types and stuff like that. So if your character was going to have resistances, that could come through. So we'll take the damage there. We'll have the amount. So, okay. First thing we want to do is send through our event. Now, if we take a look, we've got our on took damage. We invoke with the amount. We then check and see, okay, well, current health is the max. Oops, not that. Sorry, it's the mathf.max of 0. Or we can do it this way, do current health minus amount and 0. So we've updated the health, but we need to check if we've now died. So if current health is less than or equal to 0, and previously we were alive, previous health is greater than 0, then on player died, invoke. So that we pass through ourselves. So that's it for being able to have it do the taking of damage and everything. So we want to set up our health panel. So that is actually going to be very similar to our stamina bar. So I'm going to call this health panel. So because that prefab is already pretty good, I'm going to unpack that prefab completely and just rework the bits here. Health bar. Our script is going to be, I'm going to actually duplicate that. Again, it's largely doing everything we need. So if you've got stuff that's working pretty well, it's best just to reuse that. I'm going to rename all of these. Just makes it really straightforward for us to be able to have this, because we know then that everything is going to work. Because we've already tested the code for stamina, so we know we're in a good spot with it. This ends up being on health changed. Current health. So this is the advantage also of keeping things fairly similar in the way that you work with them. Makes it a lot quicker for getting things up and running. So health percentage. So this gives us then exact same setup that we have. And we'll just reconfigure the colors. So it's already, that's using the stamina bar one. So we're going to switch this over to health. Remove that and just link everything up. So when we're at max health, we're going to have that be sort of a palish red, I think works. And then at really low health, that can get really quite bright. We could also adjust this a little bit more, make it a little bit so there's more of a distinction there. That looks pretty good. So it's just getting sort of more red and sort of angry looking. So health changed, we link that up to this. Can do the same things. So that is pretty good. We can turn that into a prefab now. We need a way of being able to have stuff take damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cube and I'm going to place this cube over here. We'll make it quite a bit larger. Let's make it 4 by 4 and we'll make it a trigger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a material. Damage zone. And what it will do is when the player is inside there, I want them to take damage. So drop the transparency on that. That looks good. So we've got our damage zone. We'll just position that -15. That looks good. So script-wise, I'm going to have this as a separate section, so this isn't really part of the character motor. So we want to have a script damage zone. So this is going to need to have a rate at which it inflicts damage. Serialized field, float, damage rate. So we might say it inflicts 5 damage a second. We need to keep track of when things enter. So a void on trigger enter. We also want an on trigger exit. And then I'm going to keep a list here of things that are inside that damage zone. So we need a way of knowing that things are damageable. So what I'm going to do is, I think a handy way of being able to work with something like this is I'm going to create a C# script that I'm going to name this iDamageable. So this is going to be an interface. Public interface iDamageable. And remember, in the character motor, we gave that a onTakeDamage function. So we're going to say that that is something that is one of the functions here for the interface, because in the character motor, we say implements iDamageable. Then our damage zone can have a list of iDamageable objects in zone. When something enters, it can go and see, okay, well, if other try get component and it tries to get iDamageable, so then we would have a iDamageable, and this will be a damageable object. So we do out damageable. So if that's the case, then objects in zone, we add it. Otherwise, the on trigger exit, we remove it. And then in update, for each var damageable in objects in zone, and we can just say damageable on take damage from this game object, and the amount is damage rate by time.delta time. So that should mean I attach that script onto it, and we just have something that anytime anything wanders into it, if it implements iDamageable, whoops, that's not the script. If it implements iDamageable, we'll be able to see it lose health. So that's looking pretty good. We do need to move the health bar panel up 50, so it's there like that. So let's test this out. So we're at full health, which is good. And see my damage zone and wander into it. So that's something where what we want to do is just check that it's picking up and who it's picking up for has entered the collider, because it could easily be the case that what it's picked up is not necessarily the right thing. So you can see what it's gotten. Our other is the player. So it's picked up the capsule collider on that. It has tried to get the component, has succeeded. It's added that one to the zone. So it should mean then they take damage. So we can step through and see it's going to run on took damage with that amount. So it's a very, very small amount. So we might need to be increasing that. So we can see that amount actually is very, very small. So current health is gone down a little bit. We do want to make sure that the health isn't trying to recover yet, and actually it would, because if we took a look, we forgot one of the key things that we put in consume stamina that we didn't put here, and that is health recovery delay remaining is our config and our health recovery delay. So we were actually healing as we were taking damage, so we were never seeing the impact of it. So let's try that again. So we run over to our damage zone and we can see our health is decreasing. The bar is again changing color like it did with the other one. If I hop out of that, there'll be a delay. And that's that fairly lengthy 5-second delay. It starts recovering. We hop back in, we lose health. So we've got our setup where our character is able to have health. They have stamina. Both of those are able to be consumed. We have events that fire off when key things happen. We've set up our interfaces for feeding that through in a fairly modular way, so it's really easy if we want to go and change this to be showing health or showing the stamina in a different way. We've got an interface that gives us the current, gives us the max, so we can work out percentages. We could show it in little cell values, whichever way we want to. We have that set up and working and able for us to be working with this however we want. And if we wanted to add in stuff like, being able to apply healing packs and that, it'd be very easy to add in a function that does that. So all we would need if we wanted to add in a heal is a public void on perform heal. We might want the source and the amount. So then that, our current health is going to be the mathf min of current health plus amount and our config max health. So really quick to add in the ability to do that. That way now we've got interfaces for being able to be healed, being able to take damage, and we can extend and add that so you could have healing potions, things like that in your game quite easily. And we've used this for health and stamina, but you could choose this for something like mana or other resources, depending upon what you need for your game. Thanks folks, I hope you found the video interesting and helpful. If you have, chuck in a like and subscribe, really helps out, it's really appreciated. If you've got any questions, chuck in a comment below. If there's other things you'd like to see added to it, chuck those in as well as in a comment. If you're looking for the code for the project, this code is available up on GitHub. You can use this code in any of your own projects, commercial, non-commercial ones, you're freely able to be using it there. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, then I do have a Patreon, and you'll find the link to that in the description below as well. But until next time,